Hi, this is the recording for the presentation I held February 8. And the main reason that I'm re-recording some parts of it is to kind of more smoothly talk about certain things in a clear way, considering we had some questions, and this way perhaps it will be more easily clarified. Either way, I'm going to start now. So, the assignment for the upcoming 2 weeks is 3D scanning and digital bricolage. And during this part, we will start by developing and gathering raw digital material by scanning artifacts, buildings, and infrastructure. You can also find some items on certain sites, and a lot of these I will as well have linked in the progress sheet. One of those sites is, for instance, Sketchfab, which is quite nice. To do these scans, I would recommend using Zephyr 3D, but Recap or Metashape or whatever software you want to use is totally fine. I just thought Zephyr 3D is one of the easier ones, and it's free to use. Once you have your scans, you will composite the raw digital material into Rhino using work sessions collaboratively. Work sessions is quite a great feature where you can work together with your colleagues and continuously update the model and work in the same model. This makes for easier collaboration, but also these accidents where you have to work around whatever your teammates do, and you'll find these unexpected things happening right in the model that I think can be quite nice. I would say when you work on this, still pay attention to foreground, middle ground, and background. Please use ornaments, textures, and colors, as well as in garage, as in terms of people and vegetation as you see fit. And remember to refer to your analysis of the primary elements that make up your team's imaginary prison design. And for the ones who want to use other types of software to do this, I wouldn't say you can't, but I would say a reason why to use Rhino is that as one of the deliverables will be to make somewhat of a picture that is also a drawing, and Rhino, since it's one of the programs that is the most suitable for both 3D modeling but also creating drawings and CADing, and having that level of precision makes it quite a good tool for this. Then when you're done, or as you're working rather, we want you to re-import your Rhino composition into Minecraft and continue developing it. And to just start preparing for the first person presentation. You can use Lithimatica, welded it, or and combine it with using OBG schematics, the website, or Blender if you need to re-import it. So at this stage, I would also start looking into which tool you want to use for the video. if you want to go for Twinmotion, Blender, or Unreal Engine. Notice that I didn't mention Rhino. And really, depending on what tool you choose, the workload will change, but also, of course, the final results. And I would say that, so for instance, Rhino, it's a great tool. It's good for precision modeling. You can do line drawings, nerve modeling, advanced building simulations, but it's not really made for video creation, right? It really got this precision and a lot of things that are really great for architects in general, right? But visualizations isn't its strongest suit. In that regard, I'd say Twinmotion is a good way of complementing it. So I'd say Rhino and Twinmotion is kind of a good match, right? And because Twinmotion is only for visualizations, it's great for video creation, for rendering, for creating animations of different sorts. It got a good weather system and whatnot, right? And I would for sure say that everybody should probably be using Rhino, especially for the precision and the effect of being able to combine line drawings and 3D modeling, right? But those two programs kind of complement each other, right? Blender and Unreal Engine 5, they are as well really good. I'd say Blender can probably do everything within animation that you would want to do. And if you want to just make a video, I think Blender is great. Downside with Blender, right, is that it doesn't have per se the same type of precision, and so it's not as commonly used in architecture because of that. It's a little bit, it feels a little bit wonky to do like line drawings and those type of things, but it's great for mesh modeling. It's good with sculpting, and you can create super nice videos and physics simulations and effects, and it's really nice. You can make high quality, professional videos inside a Blender, and so it's very good for all these things. And you could theoretically do the whole video inside of Blender, right? Which is quite nice. Unreal Engine 5, however, I wouldn't say it's as good, perhaps, with like modeling in some sense of way. I'm not entirely sure how their kind of Boolean system and whatnot works, but it's but at the same time, one could also say that Unreal Engine is the most powerful one. It's highly optimized, like more than any of the other ones. Not even close, because it's a game engine, right? And while the other ones kind of have to produce some type of output, like a video or a picture, Unreal Engine can do all of those things, but also do it in real time, which means that you can play around inside of it. You can walk through it, or do VR inside of Unreal Engine. And since Twinmotion on Unreal Engine is connected through the fact that Twinmotion is developed through Unreal Engine, that also means that Twinmotion have a lot of those similar in that regard, right? But with, for instance, you can do VR in both of them. However, Twinmotion is easier, but also more restricted, right? While Unreal Engine, it's you can do anything inside of it, right? So it is for sure the best tool for representation, but not the most easy to master, right? And for the deliverables, we have the A1 PDF of the selected view of your own colorful pre-nested digital collage interpretation, and this is not only a picture, right? It's also drawing. So you have to have in mind that it shouldn't just be like a screenshot, right? It's like really try to use your imagination, try to push this picture to the limits, right? And make it really pop. Add layers of both rendering and of like line drawing and different thicknesses and make things pop. Also, think about if you can perhaps mesh different pictures together, for instance, or create interesting illusions that really bring this picture to something that is really representative for your vision, but also it becomes a great tool for creating this wow, for making people kind of surprised and excited for your project, right? And then make 3 views, just screen captures of your Minecraft model, and to be able to show it, right? And the same with your Rhino model or Blender or whatever you use, right? Then I would say that just remember to add all of the things you work on into your design log, and so no things get forgotten. Don't save these things until then, and this also helps us to see if you're kind of ahead, or if you are doing well, or whatnot. Statement of 250 to 400 words of your digital raw material, bricolage, and use of and also remember to use or talk about the different effects, the ornaments, textures, and colors, and your intent, right? Make a 3-minute verbal presentation of your team's latest imaginary prison design. And then a verbal presentation of your team's latest imaginary prison design presented within Minecraft. And then export your Rhino models as well as an FBX or OBJ, which isn't a very difficult thing, but you can do it. Either way, I'd say these steps, these first steps, are the most important ones for the crit. Right, I think the last one might be in case you want to do VR or something. Either way, yes, that is the assignment, and hope this cleared up some things. So real quickly, I'm just gonna bring up Zephyr 3D. And the program itself is quite easy to handle. And basically, you you can just drag and drop files that you have. So I downloaded a few files from that I took quite a long time ago. And as you pull it into the software, it will use all of the photos to set up or kind of calibrate them within the space and make some type of point cloud. So in most of the cases, you can probably just use general, and it will make the point cloud. How many of you have used photogrammetry before? I imagine quite a few of you. Like 3, 4, 5 people, yeah, something like that. Maybe some people on Zoom as well. You can add yourself to the project. I am considering to just cancel this, and perhaps it takes a little bit of time, but after just going through the steps, it's not anything strange. What you'll end up with is you'll end up with a sparse point cloud. So something like this, right? At this point, you're not going to be able to see a lot, but you get a kind of an understanding of what is the information that it managed to pull from the pictures. In my case, you can also see the blue dots, which show us where the camera angles were kind of calibrated to be, right? And the photogrammetry software usually use different points in the picture where it kind of recognizes it and then can understand that it's in a specific point of view. Also have in mind that all kind of textures and whatnot that you get will be defined by, let's say, the lighting you're using and what type of camera you have and whatnot, but it's quite self-explanatory. But I've gotten some strange results sometimes if I'm like blocking the light with my body when I'm like taking photos, and then you get like a very dark part of the model. Either way, right? You then from it you generate a dense point cloud. And I'm not gonna do that again, considering we efficiency. And dense point cloud is not inherently that different from the other point cloud, except for it just having much more points, right? But it's still just points in space. So from that, you want to continue and then generate or mesh extraction. And now it basically makes those points into, okay, I'm not sure what's happening, into a mesh. If you want to, you can, before that, you can trim inside of the program, or you can just export it as it is. For instance, deleting things that you don't want to keep inside of the model, right? But Otherwise, if you're happy with the result, and by the way, like for instance here, we can see that we didn't have as many points in general, so the results of the backside becomes, well, way less precise. While on the front side, we have a lot more data, and you get a better result, at least, even if this isn't right by any definition. And then when you're happy with it, generate and export enhanced mesh, and then you can define how many like triangles and what you want. And the main thing, right, is that max triangles per chunk is just per model that you export, how many triangles it should have, and this is how many triangles it has currently. Most likely you'll not have to think about that too much. If we just set it on the desktop, I can just drag and drop the import file. As you can see, we now have this photogrammetry model. In your case, you probably want to trim it a little bit more, or perhaps reduce the mesh if the polygon count gets a little bit too big. And in most cases, I think like 20,000 isn't that big of an issue, but it might depend on how powerful your computer is. I know that some models, when they start going up to 2 million or something, that it can be quite difficult to work with. So maybe yeah, reduce it to 80%. And just kind of trim away things that you don't need. Probably just want to, well, so how many of you have been working with Rhino so far? So 2 people. Some of you have worked with Rhino as well, right? In the last course. In the course or in general. So most people have, maybe half of the people. So Rhino is quite a powerful tool. Rhino 8 just came out, and there are some quite big updates to it. But the main gist of Rhino is that it was developed originally first as a CAD tool, I believe, and then also for NURBS modeling. So they're doing airplanes and whatnot. And when you work with airplanes, it's very important that you have very high precision. Right? Everything needs to be entirely correct. And that's why mesh modeling wasn't good enough, because mesh modeling is an approximation, right? Because it's all just triangles. And so NURBS, it's basically a mathematical representation that is then grafted inside of the computer. So if we, I don't know, look at a box, right? The box is most likely defined by maybe the points in the corners, and then set up through like a math, right? But it's not as interesting perhaps as if we're talking about let's say like the curves, right? And what you notice is that if we're talking about NURBS, it is a perfect representation of a surface, and if you would create lines across the surface, all of those lines would be mathematically correct. Whereas if you were using meshes, you'd get very edgy lines. And I think one of the greatest part of Rhino is how you can use it basically as a CAD tool. So you can use it as AutoCAD, or basically entirely replace AutoCAD in most instances, where you have all of the regular curves and whatnot, and line tools, and you can annotate and you can hatch. And its hatch tool is actually quite a lot better than the one they have in AutoCAD for some reason. But at the end of the day, it's still a 3D modeling software, right? And that gives you a lot of freedom, but not the same amount of freedom, but not the same amount of data necessarily as if you're using, let's say, a BIM software. So I think those two kind of fill different functions in that regard. But another thing that is quite good with Rhino, right, is that you also have a Grasshopper, which is a parametric design tool. And we do see these tools starting to quite common in a lot of different programs, like both in Blender, you have something similar. You have those in all gaming language, gaming engines. But also, we do see some of those tools being developed for Revit. I think it's called Dynamo. But basically, with it, you can do some quite fun things like creating this one. Well, either way, you can create automated scripts that do certain things, like simulations or building physics, or and I think most of you might have seen something similar to that in well, at least a lot of the things you do in building simulations, like vertical sky component or sunlight studies or wind studies and all. So it's quite prevalent within that field. But before I go too deep into anything very specific, um, so um, so um, so I think the powerful parts with Rhino are um, quite easy to understand, right? It's um, but um, I'd say the downside with Rhino is that if you want to make videos or animations of some sort, it's not the most practical tool for that. And I'd say even if we're talking about making renderings and realistic ones, it's not necessarily the easiest tool to kind of use for that. And it doesn't necessarily have a lot of these built-in functionalities like automated animation cycles or camera tools that are easy to kind of use or anything like that. And that is also why you most likely want to, let's say, work within Rhino and set up the Piranesi prism and perhaps work together, right? And once you are happy with something, then you can export the specific things you're working on either as an FBX again, and once you have it as an FBX, it's quite a common type of format that you can use in most other softwares, right? See if we can find it. Yeah, there, motion builder. But the other way of working with, especially if we're going into certain programs like Twinmotion or Unreal, then your options are going to be bigger, right? So I to kind of backtrack for a second. So if you work in Blender, you don't necessarily need to transfer into any other type of software because Blender is quite powerful for all types of video creation and whatnot. And you can do most of the modeling. But if you start working in especially Twinmotion, you are for sure going to have to do this kind of workflow between Rhino and Twinmotion because Twinmotion really isn't made for moving things around or modeling or anything like that. It's purely for representation. Um, and I'd say Twinmotion. Have everybody used Twinmotion before? So we have 2 people, obviously, 3 people, yeah. And so I might mainly focus, or I might focus a little bit more on Twinmotion in that case. But I do think that certain programs like Twinmotion, Enscape, Lumion are, I think Corona is another one. They're all getting more and more used in a lot of architectural practices, and it's mainly because it saves money. Right? instead of having to hire professional people to specifically do renderings in a high quality, you can get like pretty decent ones on your own pretty quickly. And in our case, let's just do a new scene. So I would say once you're inside of Twinmotion, you are gonna want to probably remove everything. And we can start by looking to importing the specific model. When you import, there are a few things you want to keep in mind with Twinmotion. One thing is to try to keep the hierarchy and that set is up. But otherwise, all of the different softwares, they still kind of work with the same coordinate system, right? So as long as you know where your model is in regards to the origo, the 0, point, it should line up always, right? So it doesn't really matter if you're importing things using a motion builder format or FBX, or if you're using other ways. As you can see, we're managed to import the model. In this case, it didn't get a texture, but and if you then remove things or change things inside of Rhino, and you actually export the selected things, and you basically replace the old model, then you can just refresh it. Usually you can just put a thing. Something. Oh. Okay. Now we should be able to refresh this. And then you can see how the changes are fixed. A faster way of working with this though is by using something called Datasmith. Datasmith is a plugin developed by Unreal, and it basically synchronizes with the different softwares. And you first have to download Datasmith for the Epic Games launcher, and then you have to download specific extensions to the software you're using, in our case Rhino. So if you synchronize with the data smooth, question is if we can perhaps access it here. And then it's direct link Rhino untitled key yeah, import. And what we probably will see is that we have two models on top of each other now. And as we change things inside of Rhino, okay. Well, not sure, but the electrical outlet doesn't seem to be working here, so that's not great. Yeah. All right. And in this case, it should more or less synchronize automatically as you go. So let's say we in general, I'd say it's one of the easier ways of working in between the different softwares. And as you can see, it kind of happens in real time. So you have them side by side. Yeah. The great thing about this, right, is that you will want to have things like your specific project you're building, things that you want to be able to control, manipulate, if you want to do any type of operations on a thing, and if you want to move around things in general, that you have your own kind of creative liberty over, right? So if you have any type of shape or so, and you want to somehow, you know, make some cool cool thing, right? And maybe then you don't really want to, inside of Twinmotion, start moving around things, because that's going to end up being an issue if you ever need to somehow change things, right? But Twinmotion is for sure better for a lot of other things. Like one thing that is quite nice with Twinmotion is how they have, for instance, terrain. So, and unlike Rhino, with the terrain inside of Twinmotion, you can build it. So if you need a mountain, or well, maybe a little bit further, then you can build that, and you can change the texture of the ground, for instance. You can you can create these. You can populate areas. They've changed a few things since last time I used it, but of course you can just drag and drop. But you can here we have it. Page paint. So you can, for instance, drag and drop trees into your specific brush, and you can start painting all forests, right? And these forests can later on be selected painted vegetation, and you can change the forestry by just adding different trees, for instance, or stones or brushes or grass. That's to create something, you know, more lush and forest-like. And so it's a really quick tool to create something that looks quite nice. Especially if we're talking about the vegetation part. It has a lot of assets from city items like benches, signs, and it is connected as well to Sketchfab, so you can download things from here. So you can hold buildings, and they have these mega scans that are really detailed scanned items, right? But another powerful thing is that they have these pathways. So if you want to create, let's say, people having a stroll here, you can make that happen, right? And you can define how big the pathway should be, the density of the people, or apparently now even what ethnicities, or if they are supposed to be on the beach or traveling, right? Which is fun, because all of these things give it a little bit extra, maybe believability, or that you can kind of relate to the scene. I would say though that I think they have improved the people inside of Twinmotion quite a bit, but at times they can sometimes look very Twinmotion-y, a little bit simsy, but so and some people have in those regards like, it looks Twinmotion type of thing, but I would say in most of the cases it's more due to, let's say, the artist's fidelity with the program and less with the program itself. A lot of times when you start having issues with, let's say, with texture mapping, because you see, oh, this texture is all big and fuzzy and weird, right? It's because of the model that you're using in Rhino having a strange texture mapping, or if you see wonky people, that might be true that some of the people are a little bit wonky, but there's also other ways of, let's say, you could potentially not use the Twinmotion people if you don't feel like they really fit in. So I do think it's a really powerful tool. It of course also have these lighting systems, right? So and but I think one of the let's see here if we can just see properties. So for instance, right, you can change a lot of things in regards to what time of the day it is. So if you want to have, you know, that it's in the middle of the night, you can do that. And if you want it to be, you can change the exposure depending on how dark you want it. You can change it this way just a little bit, maybe a little bit intense, but you can change what year, or if it's raining, and if it's snowing, for instance, or if it's autumn. And what you can see is that a lot of things like the trees get snow, and so the it kind of saves you a lot of things, so you don't need to think about them, which is quite nice. You change the location, horizon, ocean. So all of these things are quite common, right? But of course they have these filters as well that can be quite interesting to play around with. And for instance, having a light line can be quite nice way of giving things a little bit of extra definition, for instance. The clay render makes it possible for you to not only render everything in one color, it's this, or something neutral like white, but you can also change things up. For instance, maybe you only want the people to be white, and that could, for instance, be a way of making the characters feel less kind of uncanny if that is an issue. Another thing that is, so to kind of just show you real quickly, so normally you can just export images, right? So in this case, you pick whatever image you want to, and then lighting. Interesting. Yeah. Ah, thank you. So yeah, they have changed a few things, but as you can say, one image we can start exporting. It's usually quite quick, at least used to be. But I'd say the main thing, right, is that for instance, one of these images, and it's most likely going to be quite decent. It is very quick. Right? And you're getting some pretty decent results. You can even ramp up the quality even higher if you want to. But the most powerful part, I'd say, is how you can use a lot of these different tools to create really interesting videos and whatnot. So, and how it's quite easy. So let's say you go to a different position and you just press the plus button. And now, if you play this, right, you're gonna have a still image in the beginning, and then it's gonna start transitioning into this other perspective, right? And if you render this, you do get a 10-second video of people walking and the different perspectives you want to, right? I believe, and there are other tools as well. Like you can, I believe it's using facing, but basically you can also create videos where, so, yeah, I'm still not fully adapt to this specific part, but in general, you can, for instance, make videos where things disappear or reappear, or so if you want to, let's say, make a time-lapse video. So I'd say this is quite a powerful tool in that regard, and I think the most powerful part is how kind of easy it is to use in general and get into. And I would personally just try the tool out, and you'd most likely notice how easy it is. Right. Maybe a last thing could be to just show you how to change materials. So it has quite a lot of materials, and it just features a drag and drop system. Right? So whatever you want to, you just drag the material on top of it, and then it has the new material. And it makes it for quite an easy way of testing out things. Right? And as you can see, texture mapping might be a little bit wonky. Well, it's somewhat of a wonky model as well, but some parts of that can at times be solved as well through just rotating the UV or scaling it up or down. So if you maybe scale it down a lot, then it might not be as noticeable. And so there's a lot of different things you can change. Another important thing to have in mind is that is it used to have a back side and a front side. So if a model isn't seen at some point, then yeah, it's still under miscellaneous. Yeah, it's two-sided. If you have that on, then even if your faces are flipped, then they'll be rendered. Yeah. 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 That's really good that you noticed that. So, for those who might not have heard on Zoom, if you import directly from Minecraft using Mineways, then if you port it into Twinmotion, you might not see the materials, and that is mainly because of all of the UV mapping probably being flipped. So it renders it from the inside instead of from the outside. And if you then go into miscellaneous and press two-sided, then everything will reappear. So just pick all of the materials, and I suppose you can just, well, actually this is not the material view, so let's see. I'm just thinking the materials. Okay, so here you can see all of the materials, and then you can just select all of them. Right? Can't you select all of them at one time? Yeah. And then you can press two-sided. Yeah. Okay. So let's maybe take a break for now. We've been talking for quite a while, and meet back in 15. So 10:30. So I'm gonna show everybody a last few things, and I think one of them is, even though I'm not an expert on Unreal, but I might at some point put up another demo or something. But for now, if you're interested in learning more about Unreal, I will also link a tutorial made by someone else that I think is quite good, but it's also one of quite a long tutorial, but it's specifically made for architects to kind of explore how to use Unreal within the architecture scene. Right? But I'm just gonna mention that start using a lot of these tools, right? With Rhino, you can go to their website and you can just download either their free trial, and you can have it for 3 months, which is quite generous. But it's in general quite a cheap software if you want to buy it as well as a student. So I believe it's around 1,000 kroner for a student to buy. 1,000 or 2,000, something around that. While if you buy it while not being a student, it's around 10,000, I believe. But you do have it for life, which is still quite good if we're talking about other software where you usually kind of pay a subscription. But either way, in regards to both Twinmotion and Unreal Engine, it's free to use. And I believe you can use it commercially and whatnot, and it's not going to be an issue. The only thing is if you were to publish a game, then they would want to take profit from it, basically. So that's the business model. To do that, you have to download Epic Game Launcher. You might be familiar with it if you play games like Fortnite, but otherwise, you basically have Unreal Engine here in the library, and you can basically pick whatever version you want to download. And Twinmotion, it's similar. And you can update and you can use a lot of different versions of it, and it's all free. So it's quite nice. Once you have Unreal, well, let's see, start. Right. Another thing as well is that they also have their own marketplace inside of Unreal, where there are quite a few different type of assets that you can download and whatnot as well. It's usually a combination of some being models and whatnot, and some of them being different types like stats and achievements integration. I don't know how an architect would use that, but there are some tools that are quite useful. So this is the Unreal Engine starting menu, right? And as you can see, they have a few different fields. And pick games, which is good if you want to make a game, right? Because then you get the physics and more. And the film, then it comes with a lot of tools regarding filmmaking, like cameras and special kind of effects and and for us, of course, architecture is most likely going to be the most common one. If you want to, you can go for like archeries, and I think it's good if you want to just figure out the program in general, because then they just have a buttload of things and like cutscenes and whatnot. I think the tutorial that I'm gonna send out, they actually go for the blank one just to kind of keep it clean, because the archers won't have a lot of things you just generally don't need and wouldn't want to have in a project later on. Either way, this is one of those that I downloaded myself. And as you can see, you can kind of move around quite easily inside of the software. And in general, it isn't that different from a lot of other ones, but there's just a lot more functionalities and tools that one have to have in mind. I think to begin with, the main thing we want to have in mind is one part could be if you're having an issue with the rendering and it's going really slow, turn off the real time, and that will stop things from simulations and whatnot, and things from moving around. But the second thing I just keep in mind is if you have downloaded Datasmith, and if you have, then that's going to be one quite an easy way of kind of connecting to the Rhino file. And as you can see, it's just direct link, and then you basically pick whatever Rhino file you're currently using. And just as when you're using Twinmotion, it will continuously just update the model and whatnot to sync up. And right now, I think we're getting both syncs from right. We're basically getting this model right synced up. So if we modify something here, then it should be modified in, yeah. So so that's nice. Here we can see one that is slightly nicer perhaps, and as you can see, the set up these video clips, right, of the arch-twist realization or video, and have some paper cut people walking around. So this might not be the most impressive thing ever seen either, but it still gives you some idea of something that you can make, I suppose. I will later on link some things. So basically, a Rhino sheet where you can kind of write down how your current progress is going, and and just basically see if you how well you know Rhino and Blender and Twinmotion and whatnot. Rhino is more common, so we have this since before, but I'm still working on making something similar for Blender. So I'll put it up as soon as possible. Do you have any questions in general? to the continued work. How many of you are interested in pursuing Unreal Engine? So 4 people at least are quite interested. I think that's nice. Have the other of you thought about which software you are gonna mainly focus on? So how many of you are thinking about Blender right now? A few, yeah. Okay. How many might go more towards Twinmotion and perhaps Rhino? That's nice. At the end of the day, I don't think there's any software that is necessarily for sure better or worse, but they all kind of fill different functions. Are there any questions on Zoom? Well, let's so as I said, Rhino is primarily a NURB modeling software. They have currently meshes, NURBs, and sub-Ds. I'm not gonna go too much into sub-Ds because my experience with those are quite limited. But basically, the sub-D is a new type of geometry where it is an interpretation of certain parameters that you give the program. And the best type of way of kind of explaining it, right, is the difference between a polyline and a spline. So if we look at a polyline, you can see that it have points and it have lines in between them. If you have a close look at a spline, however, the spline, it doesn't work like a polyline because you have the points in different ways, right? But instead of the line going directly to the point, it makes a interpretation or interpolation of the points you have given, right? Same as with sub-D, but it's with a geometry, so it's in 3D space. And inside of Rhino, right, you can go into different views, as you can see here. And the nice thing with it, right, is that you can use it quite a lot like you would use AutoCAD, for instance. And you know, if you wanted to make walls, or if you wanted to somehow, you know, trim something, or you want to give dimensions of some sort. Now the scale is a little bit wonky, but you can hatch things just like in AutoCAD. And something that is quite nice with Rhino is how the hatching is rather efficient, and just kind of works better in general than I'd say it does in AutoCAD. Even with like really complex shapes, it can usually handle it quite well. So for instance, but the other thing that is nice, right, is that once you have some type of drawing, if you want to translate that into some type of 3D representation, right, you're still in the same software. So offset, well, let's say strip code, and you can start modeling things right away and change things. If you compare it, of course, to a software like a BIM software, for instance, BIM softwares are really good for retaining information. Right? You can get a lot of information if you want to do LCA, if you want to get a report of all of the materials, how many windows you have, how many doors, etc., etc. Right? But they tend to be somewhat limiting in kind of the expression you're able to do and how quickly you're able to work within the program. A lot of times, if you want to express yourself a little bit more bravely, you might have to somehow find solutions or workarounds to create the same things. Not that one software is inherently worse or better than another one. Rhino have quite a lot of great Boolean operations as well. And what it basically means is that if you have two solid objects, and what I mean by solid is that all sides of the object is kind of covered, so it doesn't have any holes, right? So if we delete the surface, then this box doesn't have a lid and it doesn't have a end, right? So if we close it, now it becomes a solid. So these solid operations, then you can, for instance, do a Boolean difference and, for instance, work subtractively. It's not super exciting if it's a ball, right? But it can be other things, like, I don't know, a base or something. Or you can have several balls that are all subtracting in different ways. Or you can join them, so, or split, for instance. So you split the item, and now you have these four components. And it can be quite useful if you're building something, for instance. You can work between NURBs, so this is a NURB, for instance, and meshes. This is right mesh. Yeah. And now I see that this is a mesh. If you compare it to its original one, you see here, if I try to select this surface, this is just one surface, but if I try to select a mesh surface, you see that each one of them are, well, theoretically a triangle. So so we can take one surface and you'll notice, yeah. These are for instance quads, but they are kind of built upon being a triangle, so it is a triangle in theory. But what makes it quite nice is things like being able to, for instance, work with multiple clipping planes. To clip through items. You can also, with the current Rhino, choose, for instance, yes. Okay. You can choose which objects should excluded. So you can, for instance, choose objects that shouldn't be included, so that you click through all items except for those. And that can be kind of, interesting if you want to somehow show hidden objects, for instance. So you can change how the clipping works as well. So for instance, instead of it being hollow, you should be able to change everything inside of software, but you can basically change how it kind of cuts and make drawings quite rapidly within the program. Yep. Another feature that is quite useful, especially for architects, is make 2D. And what it basically does is it projects from that specific scene, and it creates a 2D drawing of the specific items you had. And you can see that you have the hidden lines that are usually the things that you see kind of behind another object. And you have the scene lines, I'm not entirely sure what's happening here, but it might be due to the clipping plane. Either way. And it makes it quite easy as well to, let's say, start hatching and, you know, creating expressions, right? Or if you want certain lines to kind of pop, then you can change them directly inside of the software. Just need to, yeah, just, so, for instance, changing the color to red and um, state. It's just a matter of I'm not entirely sure why, but it doesn't, right now at least, it doesn't show me some of the things I want. Because you can change the line thickness and whatnot while working as well. They might have switched where you can toggle that, but and you can also theoretically, as far as I know, also change, for instance, the curve's thickness along the curve, so that you can have like brush strokes, and which is a nice addition. Some of these features are only available in Rhino 8, and that's why I haven't had time to fully explore them yet. Another big part of why Rhino is quite useful as a tool, I'd say, is how Grasshopper is a really kind of well-used tool within the field of engineering and architecture in general. One part of it is due to optimization. So one could say that if you're going to do a task multiple times, right? So if you're going to do it, let's say 100 times, and instead of having to do it by yourself over and over and over again, you can make a script of some sort that automates that specific task. So let's say I create a surface of some sort. Right, it's because we have a cutting plane. If I were to So instead of, for instance, by myself having to, let's say I wanted to have a bunch of spheres on this thing, uh, um, then I can basically just let the program automate it, right? Um, and instead of having then to put out all of the spheres myself, and then you can continue making more and more complex things. Like maybe you want the size of the spheres to be, let's say, a series. So um, um, let's see, just so I can break this by mistake. Okay. Okay. Oh. Now we have a lot of randomized spheres, right? And this is a very like simple thing, right? But if we think about it in a bigger scale, we could talk about let's say ray tracing or sunlight study. So you have thousands upon thousands of facades on a building, right? And you're trying to simulate if each window or facade is getting enough light. And theoretically, you could just do 1,000 sunlight studies and just paste those results on the facade to get some type of result, right? But that would be super time consuming. And that's basically right the basis of the simulations, right? It's to make things faster and more intuitive and easy for us to do. And for instance, this, it's nothing very complicated, right? It's basically just populating a surface and creating something. If we're thinking about something more straightforward, let's say we have a curve here. And then right curve. So let's say we have a curve, we divide it by 10 points, and extrude it upwards by 900. And if we then just type this, say it's 50. Now we have like a really, really ugly railing that you can also, you know, move around parametrically that will follow and it gives you a lot of freedom to make quite quick decisions and quick designs, right? Which is something I think is quite powerful with this tool. Another part of this, right, is the fact that you can do certain things that you otherwise would really struggle to create. One of those things could be, for instance, with